So again, thank you everyone for coming today. I am going to go ahead by starting to ask all of our panelists just to begin by telling us about yourself and your organization. And I'm going to go ahead and start with Natale here. If you wouldn't mind taking that away.
Sure. Thanks, Lauren. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Natale Mazzaferro. I am the Talent Acquisition Manager for ScribeAmerica. ScribeAmerica is a medical scribe company that contracts medical scribes throughout hospital networks in all 50 states. And we've even recently transitioned into Canada and Australia in the last few years. If you don't know what a medical scribe is, it's someone who basically assists the physicians and different practitioners with the documentation needs for patient encounters throughout their shifts. So basically, a medical scribe would follow around a physician, shadowing them throughout their shift, documenting all of their patient encounters, and then editing that into an appropriate note that's, formal and able to be submitted for insurance and medical record purposes.
All right, thank you, Natale. Or Natale, sorry.
Either one is fine.
Okay. Sean, would you mind sharing a little bit about your organization?
Sure. My name is Sean Henrahan. I'm representing Equinox Fitness. Currently, we have over 106 clubs nationally and internationally. I'd also like to bring to the attention that not just Equinox, but we do have some subsidiaries that you might be familiar with as far as Pure Yoga, Blink, and SoulCycle, and most recently a hotel that opened in New York. So there's a lot of different opportunities just outside of what we have as far as the brand is the Equinox Fitness. My job as the area personal training manager is to work with the trainers and current management to meet and match their budgetary needs. And now, as you can also assume, as I guess we're going to get deeper into, is we are adapting and making changes with some facilities opening soon, probably near the end of this month. But our goal is to work through a new platform virtually and then adapt to clients' needs when we open one-to-one. Equinox itself has been open, started in 1991, and we have currently about 106 locations.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Karen, would you mind getting us started with FDA?
Sure, thank you. My name is Karen Donnelly. I'm with the Food and Drug Administration, better known as the FDA. And so if you're watching the news, you probably see FDA just about every 5 minutes. I work in the Office of Talent Solutions. It's a fancier name for human resources. My main job function is overseeing the Pathways program. So that's our internships, our recent graduate program, and our Presidential Management Fellowship. And I also oversee scientific recruitment and outreach.
Excellent, thank you. And I will now go to Elizabeth and ask you just to add a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Elizabeth Cusimano, and I also work at the Food and Drug Administration for the Center for Tobacco Products. So Karen is a colleague of mine. And as you are aware, FDA started regulating tobacco in 2009. And since that time, we've expanded our regulatory authority to include hookahs, pipe tobacco, electronic cigarettes, everybody knows. And in addition to having a regulatory compliance arm, we also have a significant public health education component. And we currently have about 750 people within our center. We hire chemists, toxicologists, engineers, epidemiologists, regulatory health project managers. It really runs the gamut when you look at scientific positions. We also have a strong legal and compliance side for regulatory counsels, so typically people who have gone through the law school route. Been with FDA since 2012, worked on FDA issues since 2008, so well versed in that arena, so good to be here.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And Kelsey, would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself? I think I might have to unmute you. Hold on. Okay. Okay. Apologies, just taking 1 minute.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So my name is Kelsey Schamberger. I am a senior recruiter at the Association of American Medical Colleges. So first I'll tell you a little bit about what our organization does, and then a little bit about what I do. So the AAMC, if you guys have ever walked around the convention center downtown, you might have seen our offices are right at 6th and K, and what we do is really represent what we kind of refer to as academic medicine. So we represent all of the teaching hospitals, all of the medical schools in the United States. We support medical research. If you're thinking about going to med school, anyone or know someone who's gone to medical school, we develop the MCAT exam and are responsible for the matching process when students are matched to their residency. So we kind of have our hands in a lot of different aspects of medicine and health. And as you can imagine, our constituency is really busy right now, and we're really busy trying to support them. I've been there a little over 4 years now in a recruiting role. So I manage all the recruiting for what we call our mission side of the house. So that's really the work that directly supports those institutions. And I also run our intern program and kind of dabble in a little training and development as well. And I'm also actually a student at the University of Maryland right now in the Industrial Organizational Psychology program too.
Well, thank you everyone for sharing a little bit about yourselves. I'm going to go ahead and dive into our second question, then we're going to open it up to student questions. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Sean. Can you talk a little bit about how recruiting practices, whether for internships, full-time employment, et cetera, at Equinox and some of your subsidiary organizations have changed due to COVID-19? And how do you see things kind of playing out over the coming months?
Sure, thanks, Lauren. One of the things is it's still a very fluid and new situation for us at Equinox. I would say our recruiting process is going to change a little bit, where normally we would have a 3-step process, even for interns or new hires. We would have them interview first with one of our recruiters and then do a site visit and meet the management, and then make a decision from there, whether for internship and or employee. Now, as I know it, as of, I believe, just about an hour ago, a lot of our meetings and interactions are going to go virtual. So a lot of our recruiting practices will be outreach to a number of different trainers, i.e. that have reached out to us personally or through our site for employment. Because one of the challenges is, as you can see in the news currently, is there's a lot of trainers that have either been terminated, furloughed, are working with, for a small differential of a payout. So I would say that moving forward, how this has changed is we may be able to open our opportunity for more visual meetings, more interaction with possible employees or interns through Zoom or some virtual aspect to find appropriate practices and more interaction. So through this new virtual platform, I feel we'll be able to meet more individuals and have more conversations to meet the needs of the club and or Equinox. So I feel like with what has happened and what changes come about, I think a lot of it's going to go virtual. Through practices in the work environment, that's going to be subject to change based on the guidelines that we'll see that will be handed down via state to state or federal. And so, then we'll have to adapt from those practices moving forward.
Thanks, Sean. Good to hear kind of from your perspective how Equinox is adapting and moving forward. Karen, would you mind sharing a little bit about kind of your sector and sphere at the FDA? And then I'll ask Elizabeth to jump in and kind of add some perspective as well.
Absolutely. So we are still actively bringing new employees on board. We have shifted to a virtual new employee orientation. So you don't physically have to come to White Oak where our headquarters is. We do have locations in just about every single state across the country. So you don't have to physically go in anywhere. We still are conducting background investigations. The only holdup I would say in some states, some police local stations aren't allowing for individuals to come in for fingerprinting. So that's been a holdup in some states. Luckily, those individuals are not giving up, and they will travel across state lines to get their fingerprints in a different state. So other than that, we haven't had any holdups on bringing new employees on board. Actually, today is the start of the next virtual new employee orientation where we have 77 individuals that joined us. And 2 weeks ago, we brought on board just about 75 employees. So we're definitely not stopping. The great thing right now, we have different hiring authorities where we're able to bring on individuals quicker and faster. So that's been helping FDA where we haven't had too many hiccups or holdups. Again, it may be a personal issue. We're doing everything we can. We do have our campus open. So our White Oak campus is where headquarters is. That is open. Do we have individuals that go there? Yes. Is it secure? Absolutely. Do we request that individuals currently working physically go in there? Absolutely not. I'd say most of our staff is still working 100% remote. We do have auditors and inspectors that are still conducting audits and inspections. But so far, I will say there's been no holdups on bringing new employees on board from internships all the way to a very high professional level. So I'll stop and let Liz chime in to hear more about the tobacco side.
Thanks, Karen. Elizabeth?
Excuse me. Thanks, Karen. Yeah, we are still actively hiring. We have, as you all may or may not know, a significant workload coming our way with the impending regulatory applications for electronic cigarettes ends. So we have a lot of positions open. We have not stopped our recruiting practices. While we don't necessarily go in person because of the limitations there, we do still virtually attend career fairs where appropriate. As Karen mentioned, we're still bringing on significant number of people every pay period. I'm hoping that in looking long term in terms of how things might potentially change, I'm hoping that this experience, while not anticipated really at all, people can see the benefit in some ways of having a virtual workforce and the flexibility that it provides. I think there has been some hesitance previously, and being able to shift significantly. At CTP, we are 100% telework and we are still high productivity. So I think managers are seeing that it is possible to have individuals go remote and still maintain some level of sufficient quality outcomes.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Kelsey, would you mind telling us a little bit about how AAMC is doing things?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are similarly kind of continuing with our recruiting processes and honestly using the same processes that we have, except obviously everything's gone remotely. So for us on our end, it's been kind of overnight trying to figure out how do we support both our interviewers and then our candidates coming through with what they need. We did suspend our internship program. So that was one change that we made. And I'm sure that maybe some of you in the call have had your internship suspended, which is definitely a really difficult and challenging, I think, side effect of all of this. But we are bringing on a few interns this summer, or a few temporary employees who we had already hired. So we wanted to kind of honor that. But, you know, I think, you know, I'll echo what other folks said, that I think it's really kind of business as usual in some ways with recruiting. And what I've seen is that, you know, where supervisors before might be reluctant to hire someone, never having met them face to face, you know, they're really comfortable now. I made 5 offers last week, and they're really comfortable and excited about having those new employees on board. And so I think that's really going to change for the future. It's going to be interesting to see sort of what comes of that.
Thanks, Kelsey. It was great to hear some of those insights on what you're seeing. Natale, would you mind sharing your perspective next?
Yeah, definitely. I can say for our recruiting strategies, we relied heavily on campus recruitment, so in-person live sessions, getting to meet candidates face-to-face and talking through what positions we have to offer. But obviously overnight, all of those events had been canceled. So we had to rapidly shift to virtual recruiting events. So what I had a hand in planning was company-wide virtual events that are being administered 2 to 3 times a week via Google Hangouts, the platform that we typically use for our own remote meetings in middle management. And that's been proven pretty successful. We've had roughly 200 candidates attending these sessions week by week. And I think that's something that we'll probably integrate into our recruiting workflow long-term. As far as hiring, we did have to freeze hiring for about 1 to 2 weeks just to kind of communicate with our clients. Obviously, a lot of these hospital networks and physicians' offices were scrambling, trying to make last-minute plans to address COVID or determine whether or not they could even remain open. So since then, since things have kind of stabilized a bit, we've been able to restart hiring again in a lot of our markets and really project out the hiring needs for the next few months. So we are actively hiring again, which is good news. And like I said, I think these virtual events that we are administering now will be something that we integrate in the long term because they have proven successful.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone, for sharing some of those insights and just giving us a picture of what recruiting looks like right now across different organizations. So we do have a couple student questions. Before I ask Rachel to bring those in for us, I do just want to remind everyone that we are taking questions for panelists. If you have some, you can submit them by using the chat feature and directing them directly to Rachel Wobrack, and she'll help make sure that we get those to our panelists. So Rachel, would you mind sharing those questions that you've gotten so far?
Absolutely. I have 2 so far. The first one's probably a pretty quick one, and it's for Karen. One student asked if you're currently hiring recent graduates for any of the positions.
Yes, we are. So the way the recent grad program works is whenever there's a need, we will post a recent grad announcement. So usually from a GS7 to around a GS12 grade level. But don't quote me because I didn't check today, but we do have recent grad announcements that are either out right now or will be coming out, and those are from across each center. So Liz in her shop, they post regulatory counsel recent grads. Liz, if you wanted to chime in and what other recent grad announcements that you post.
Yeah, give me a second. Okay.
Okay.
We have done recent grads for consumer safety officers, which are also individuals that have a public health background. We've done recent grad announcements for health communication specialists, which are typically individuals who may have MPHs with a communication experience. The RHP, the regulatory health project managers, which is typically more of just your straight MPH, and regulatory health information specialists, which is an MPHer who has a tie-in with health IT. So yes, we absolutely are posting those announcements, and they are on a continuous basis. Right now, I don't think we actively have one as of open today, but it changes all the time. So that just because today is static, it's one point in time. So you continually want to check the jobs page and look for future announcements.
Great, thanks so much. The other question that I have here, the student asks, it says, a lot of internships often have a focus on mentorship. How is that being handled with those of you that are still proceeding with remote internships, keeping that mentorship piece still an important part of that internship?
I can start.
Yeah. Thanks, Elizabeth.
The biggest thing is to, from our end, we have tried to provide tools and resources to hiring managers to make sure that they have adequate communication with their intern, and that is really kind of the foundation as to how we feel will be a successful internship, because of the person-to-person piece and the kind of experience is going to be removed. It's so important that the hiring manager finds a way to connect with the intern, have it be over IM, or have it be using your camera, but having that constant communication, and also just conversation about expectations and outcomes. And so it's definitely been acknowledged that that is something that we have to have at the forefront in terms of bringing on students and ensuring that we have that not only we, but they more importantly have a successful internship and experience at CCP and FDA as a whole.
Elizabeth. Sean, would you mind talking a little bit about how that might go virtually? You're talking about exploring that virtual space. So just any insight you might have there.
Sure. We actually had a intern right before all this happened, and we had to cut it about a week short. We ended up actually setting up a few meetings afterwards virtually to address some of the coaching components for what we do and what we need to accomplish for that particular internship. I think what was remarkable too is leading up to us closing our facility more local to Bethesda, Maryland, he was able to sit on conversations, whether it be for staff, interactions with members, interactions with those that were concerned about what the next steps were. So from that learning component, I thought was really beneficial. And then that last week that I referred to led to him asking a lot more questions about the what ifs, what's next, and how would you approach certain scenarios based on trainers being concerned or employees being concerned about layoffs and or earning opportunities moving forward. So it was a two-part, but I think from that last interaction leads us to how we're going to modify interactions that we'll have in the future. We are looking for those staff members that can be adaptable, and then where they were more accustomed to the brick and mortar facility, we're going to find that they have to be able to train virtually, one-on-one, and then whatever third component that we can think of, whether it be outdoor, if that's an opportunity. So I think it's going to be a combination of three, depending on the restrictions that we have moving forward.
Thanks, Sean. Natale, would you mind shedding a little light on that, how that might look moving forward?
Sure. I can't really speak to internships since we're not offering internships, just regular positions. But I will say that our middle management team has actually always been remote. So I've always been remote overseeing regions outside of where I live. So I'm used to communicating with people from far distances, and our team has gotten really well versed in maintaining that type of contact, ensuring that they're following up accordingly, scheduling video hangouts such as this just to ensure that they're checking with team members, and overall just making sure that candidates and employees are engaged. So our management team is pretty used to the remote environment, so it hasn't been a major adjustment for us to switch to this virtual workflow.
Great, thank you. And Kelsey, would you mind sharing your perspective?
Yeah, so as I said, we're not hosting interns this summer, so I can't speak to that necessarily, but I think one of the first things on our mind when we kind of transitioned to this overnight was thinking about how we can support our staff and employees in this new environment. And so much of the work we've done has been focused on creating resources for them. So helping staff understand really how to connect with their employees, how to keep folks engaged, creating different suggestions and team guidelines around that. So that's been a huge focus of ours. And I think just also trying to kind of continue building those connections on our teams. So I think that's something that, hopefully, in any internships that, folks might take on this summer, that organizations are really thinking about as we're kind of going through this, and this becomes, in some ways sort of a new normal for now.
Great, thanks everyone. Rachel, did I see, is there another student question?
Yes, and this is going to be a combination of a couple questions around a similar theme. But are there any skills or qualities that you're looking for right now that might have been different than skills or qualities that you were looking for before our current situation in COVID-19? Kelsey, if you want to start.
Yeah. It's a really good question. I think, I think one of the things that, and I'm just kind of thinking about it now, to be honest with you, because there's not like a conscious list that I have, but in terms of soft skills, I think what's going to be really, really critical as, we're doing maybe intermittent working from home or continuous working from home for the next, unknown period, is really strong communication and collaboration skills. I think, in managing projects and, we're launching a whole new strategic plan this year, and that's continuing. And so it's big work that we have going on. And I think it can be a little more difficult when you're not around people all the time, sharing those ideas naturally. And so folks who can demonstrate really good like communication and project management accountability skills, I think are going to be even more critical because we don't have that face time anymore. So I think that's going to be pretty important for us.
Great, thanks, Kelsey. Karen, would you mind sharing your perspective on that question?
Sure, I would definitely agree with Kelsey. Definitely strong communication skills. I think one off the top of my head while working with my team, I was fortunate enough to see them usually on a daily basis. And so that has completely shifted. And, let's be honest, we're at home. We don't always, change out of our pajamas. And so we don't turn our cameras on, as it's not necessarily a requirement. So we're relying a lot on emails. And because of that, writing skills. I had a newer intern of mine ask me if there were any writing skills type of programs out there that she could watch, or where would I direct her to, because she's not used to writing very detailed emails to staff members. Most of the times you can just, get up, walk next door, talk to them, talk about the issue, close it out, go back to your computer and get back to working. But now you're having to write out these very drawn out, detailed emails. So writing skills would be something that I would add on to Kelsey's list.
Great, that's excellent. Thank you. Do you have anything to add there?
Was that to me? I'm sorry.
Yes, sorry if
Okay.
thing you'd like to add.
Yeah, no, I highly agree with Kelsey and Karen. I like the communication and collaboration. Writing skills, yes, that's a huge outreach for us also when it comes to member and staff. And I like also, you know, outside of how we present ourselves through Zoom, I always kind of relay this message to students and future employees is that, you know, now that we're more virtual, more online, remember what we put out there can always come back to us. So, you know, creating and setting a presence of what you do and what you put out there really, you know, is the next steps for what you're looking to do. And there's so many resources available nowadays as far as individual writing programs, how to give a presentation. And I would say utilize what's out there and be, in addition to the collaboration, be adaptive. You know, we don't know, depending on a lot of these different industries, what the exact standard operating procedures will be. And being able to adapt and ask questions is going to be clear, you know, crucial. And that goes back to Kelsey's initial comment about communication.
Excellent, thanks. Natale, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Sure, yeah. I was trying to think of a few things, but definitely want to echo what the rest of the panel has been saying in terms of communication, being adaptive. One thing I did think of was, you know, being proactive in terms of keeping up to date with the current state of healthcare, especially for our scribes. A lot of the physicians are just kind of rapidly trying to adjust to the regulations that are coming out every week about COVID-19, how to treat patients. And I think that they could just use some assistance in navigating that because it is changing every day. It feels like every hour sometimes. So especially for our medical scribes who are there to help the physician, if they could just add an extra layer of clarification on certain things, researching different forms of treatment to aid the physician and guiding them in the treatment of the patient, that's something that could really benefit the workflow.
All right, thanks everyone for sharing kind of those insights on how things might be changing or what skills are becoming even more important in this day and age, being in this virtual environment. My next question, kind of tailoring and following off of that, is for students right now who are thinking about, you know, how to really stand out, what can they be doing right now, really taking advantage of this time to make themselves competitive applicants either now or when, you know, hiring freezes lift. Are there any suggestions you have for them? What should they be doing right now? Natale, would you mind starting us off since you're already up there?
Yeah, I would say, you know, use this time that you have to your advantage. You know, start to maybe do some reflection, introspection about your past experiences and write them all down and really try to formulate them in a way that's the most presentable to the positions you're looking for. Not just scribing, which I'm here to represent, but any type of position you're looking for. Really think about what you've done in the past and how it can be applied to the different positions. Update your LinkedIn profile, make sure you're tailoring your resumes to the positions you're actually applying to. Don't just have a generic resume, you know, so prepare yourself to do that and make those adjustments. So I would say, you know, use this time to really take a look back at what you've done and see how you can market yourself effectively.
Awesome, thank you. Elizabeth, would you mind jumping in on that question?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I would echo what Natale said, but also and recognizing that y'all are students and busy, but to the extent that you can also take on any volunteer or short-term projects, I would recommend you do so because it just adds to your portfolio. Some examples, so openopportunities.gov posts student internships. A nonprofit that I recently came across called Catch a Fire, which is actually pretty cool. It's based out of New York City, and they connect, particularly now with the COVID situation, they're connecting individuals with certain skill sets with nonprofits. So like American Cancer Society posted that they needed some assistance for certain projects. So you are kind of walking into an environment in which you can gain some experience that you can translate to your resume, because from a federal position, we look at paid, unpaid, volunteer, school, like across the board. So don't necessarily limit yourself to just looking for paid opportunities if you're in the situation to consider other options. Another organization that I know posts a lot of paid and volunteer opportunities is idealist.org, which again is nonprofit, but it allows you to, in the time in which you, if you have it, to gain some additional experience to potentially make you a little bit more competitive, maybe hone in on some of your skill sets that you can not only help out other organizations, but, build your portfolio. And lastly, and I'm sure Karen can touch on this as well, but in applying for federal positions, just make sure that you really tie your resume to the job in which you're applying. And so any relevant experience in which the job speaks to it, highlight that in your resume and provide clarity and transparency in doing that.
Great, thanks. Karen, do you have anything to add from that kind of government FDA perspective?
Yeah, so spot on. What I would just say to add on to Liz's is I know, when you're speaking with professors and going to your career centers, a lot of times you're told keep that resume to one page and take that information and throw it out the window when you're applying to federal government jobs. We are looking for everything and anything, any type of leadership that you held, whether it be in a sorority or a fraternity, we want to know about it. We want to know how long. Same thing with unpaid experiences that, volunteer opportunities, things like that. Don't ever feel that if you haven't gotten paid for something that it doesn't, connect with experience. So to echo what Liz said, do not leave anything out on your resume, but also ensure that you thoroughly read the job announcements, specifically for the federal government. It is a lot of reading, but it is worth it. So anytime I tell a student, don't just run and apply and be done with it, actually take some time and read it, all of it. And then go back to your resume and say, okay, so if I had to rate myself, would I qualify for this position? There is usually 9 times out of 10, something is missing from your resume. And it's only after you read an announcement that you realize, wait a second, if I were to, look at this and have to review it, there would be something left out. So, something to think about. Our announcements in the federal government, they do open and close very quickly. That's actually standard. A normal announcement for the federal government is open for about 5 days. I will say this, that if you see an announcement and you see that it closes that day, make sure you apply. You cannot contact after the fact to say, hey, I missed the deadline. Can you open it for me? The answer is always going to be no. And you have to keep in mind that we have a lot of applicants for our announcements, recent grads, interns, and a lot of times we have to put on there that this closes on this day or when we hit our applicant cutoff. And we hit that applicant cutoff all the time. So the applicant cutoffs can range from 100 to 300 to 500 applicants. And that's usually around the first 1 or 2 paragraphs. When you open an announcement, you're able to see that. So keep that in mind as well. If it says there's a cutoff, I would not delay applying to that announcement. I would spend time right then and there and make sure I apply before midnight, because if you open it up at 12:01 a.m., chances are it could be closed.
Thanks for those excellent insights into kind of the federal government, how it operates in terms of applicants being open, and all the great information. Kelsey, sorry, I'm searching for you. Would you mind sharing and weighing a little bit on that?
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting that a lot of us have the same advice, because I'll echo just what a lot of other folks said. I think that, you know, really making sure your resume is tailored is super, super important. You know, I think in this new kind of environment, it might be that for some people in some industries or targeting certain companies, that there might be, you know, honestly fewer opportunities than there were before. And so I think how that kind of applies to you is that you really have to make the most of the opportunities that you have. So whether it is really practicing interviewing, actually saying the words out loud, taking advantage of the career services that you have, doing a mock interview, making sure you really understand the organization before you speak with the recruiter. I think it always impresses me when someone points out something that we've shared in the news, or has really great questions about the organization. So I think it's really just the same advice that I give people generally. I think it's just even more important now to help you kind of stand out. And definitely agree, if you find yourself with some time on your hands, take the opportunity and learn something new. I know, like, there's a lot of courses on different data visualization tools, and I know a lot of positions, we love people with experience in those tools. And so that's just one example, but I think there's a lot of opportunities to kind of gain new skills. So yeah, basically what everyone else said, but those would be the key things for me.
All right, thanks, Kelsey. And on top of what Kelsey said, really using your career center resources. We do have resources for, putting together your resumes, helping review them, practicing interviewing, preparing for your application. So really, we encourage you to come make appointments and meet with your career advisors as well. Just a personal plug there. Sean, would you mind? We have one more student question. Did you have anything to add on top of that, or do you feel like everyone kind of touched on everything?
I feel that everybody touched on everything, but I just wanted to highlight Kelsey's comment about the opportunities. Is that, this is not by any means to scare anybody, but the students them now looking for the future, really doing their research, but also realizing that you are up against a lot of individuals that will be reapplying for positions across whatever, interests you. So really adapting, knowing what you're looking for, and Natale mentioned before, do your research, know about the company. And when you can highlight and bullet point stuff of interest and take interest to where you're applying, that means a lot to those that are doing the interviews.
Great, thanks, Sean. I do know, so we're getting right up against kind of our timeline. We do have one more student question that I would like to highlight those. So Rachel, would you mind taking that? And then Sean, if you wouldn't mind being the one to answer first.
Sure.
All righty. For students that are thinking that it doesn't look like they're going to get an internship this summer, given their industry or how things have played out at this point, what advice would you have for someone that was going into the workforce without an internship? What other experiences would you recommend? Actually,
I'm gonna kick back to I believe Elizabeth mentioned volunteering, and then Natale's mention of what you do with the time that you didn't have the opportunity for the internship. So within those two aspects of utilizing your time effectively, outside of what you missed, how'd you fill in that time? So I would say, creating opportunities for yourself through volunteering, or finding ways that you could have integrated yourself somehow, some way within the area of interest that you have. But also, taking the time to see what you could have done that would make you a higher yield or a candidate level within what you're interviewing.
Thanks, Sean. Does anyone else? I'm just going to open it up instead of directing at this point. If someone has something to add that they think would be particularly good for the student or for all students to know from our panelists.
I do have one thing. I think sometimes students, are wary or concerned about putting their schoolwork on their resume. But if you're worried that your resume looks a little thin, tell me about a project that you did. If something's relevant to the job you're applying for, I want to hear the details about it. And it's okay to put that on your resume. So don't be afraid to do that.
Absolutely. I agree with Kelsey about that. We love to hear about projects. And, a lot of times people say I'm unemployed, but if you're in school, that is a full-time job to us. So, do consider that when you're applying to positions. It's a great program. It's a developmental program. So you have 1 year to decide, do I like this? Was this the right thing for me? Is a federal career path the right path for me? You receive a mentor. So it's a great opportunity for those that have graduated within 2 years. And just recently, FDA actually moved towards helping out this program where you're able to apply to a recent graduate program 9 months from your graduation date. So you could potentially have a position at FDA upon graduation.
Thanks, Karen. So I do know we're right up at that time. Natale or Elizabeth, did you have anything you wanted to add on top of that? Kind of what should students be doing if they're, don't have an internship but are looking to get into the workforce after this summer?
Just what Kelsey and Karen said, and any potential leadership experience can really translate well. So, you were part of a project, but you led the project. That speaks volumes in terms of exhibiting leadership skills that if you were maybe not positioned in to get an internship. So think broadly, think creatively, and really think retrospectively in terms of how you can use your experiences to sell yourself, essentially, and don't walk in feeling less than if you didn't have an internship. It's not the be all end all of everything. People, you move on, you're fine. It's good.
Okay, thanks, Elizabeth. Natale, anything you wanted to add?
Nothing major to add, just echoing what the rest of the panel has stated. One little thing that I might say you could do with your time if you can't find an internship is I know companies, and I know LinkedIn is offering some free professional development courses on their website. So that could be something that you could use in the interim just to maintain those skills that you have and potentially add that to your resume or your experience. So research those opportunities that these companies are offering during these times. They know a lot of us are stuck at home, so they're trying to help us out.
Yeah, thanks, Natale. And as UMD students, any attendees here, you do all have access to LinkedIn Learning, where you could access those professional development videos and tutorials. So definitely encourage you to check those out as well. And if you have any questions about where you can find those, you can go to the University Career Center website, and we have some information about that for you. So that pretty much wraps up our time here today. I really want to thank our panelists for spending the time. I know we had a little bit of a technical difficulty there, so thanks for your persistence in logging in and for joining us today. For those, for students who might be interested in reaching out to you directly, I know You said you might be willing to share your information or share your emails. So we will get all of that information to students. If you registered, you'll receive an email after this with the recording of this, and we'll share the emails. If not, you can also, I'm sending my email there. So you can email me and I can get you the information and get you connected. Before we close out and go, I just want to ask again for any of our student attendees, if you wouldn't mind sharing your email or your UMD ID, just so we know who attended, how many people we had. Really helps us understand who's interested and kind of who's consuming this information. We won't share that information with anyone. No one else will be able to see it. If you just want to chat it directly to Rachel Wobrack. We'll leave this open for a little while. But I just want to thank all of our panelists. And yeah, thanks and have a great rest of your day.
Right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.